Electric cars have not been exactly a jolt to the automotive industry. They account for just 3% of the cars sold so far this year. Joe White is with us in Chicago to tell us about what automakers are doing to try to accelerate sales. Joe, thanks for being here.
Hi, Kelly, and I'm in Detroit.
Oh, Detroit. I'm sorry. We had our last guest from Chicago.
That's all right.
Now, I understand this is a pretty niche market, with a lot of the buyers tending to be maybe a little bit younger than your standard car buyer, a little more affluent. Are we still talking early adopters here, or is this just, the people who are able to afford these cars right now?
I think what the car industry is trying to do with electric cars and hybrid cars, and they're kind of lumped together to get to that 3%. Pure electric cars are an even smaller niche. But what the car industry is trying to do is, one, they have to field these automobiles in part to deal with regulation. But what they're also seeing, and I got this from Strategic Vision, which is a consulting firm, is that the people who buy hybrids and electrics are, as you say, they're young, they're affluent, they're enthusiasts. And what the car industry is trying to do now is walk from the very early adopters, the same kind of people who line up for an iPhone on the very first day, to get to those people who will get an iPhone maybe 2 weeks later. They're interested in technology, willing to try it out, but it's got to be a little more mature for them. The real challenge is getting to what one person I talked to, basically the sort of the Joe Six-Pack market, people who just want a car that behaves normally, and we're not quite there yet with these kinds of vehicles.
And when you talk about behaves normally, I mean, you mentioned a lot in the piece when you were testing these about the idea of sort of adjusting that you're not looking at miles per gallon, you're looking at range for something like an electric vehicle. Is that the sort of behavior adjustment that you're talking about, and all of those details?
Yes, that's absolutely right. I mean, basically what we're looking at now is kind of a second wave of electrics and strong hybrids coming into the market now over the next year. And I test drove a Honda Fit EV and a Ford Focus electric, which are basically all electric versions of two cars that are on the market now as conventional cars. And range is still a big issue. If you're not someone whose lifestyle is very organized and organized around maybe 40 or 50 miles of round trip commuting per day or less, you can find it a little disconcerting when you're halfway through your day and your range on the electric car is down to, say, 15 miles or something like that, and you're 20 miles from home. And really, that is a big barrier, I think, to adoption by a lot of consumers. Price is another, but the car companies can address the price problem through the magic of leasing, and they're trying to do that now.
Price was actually the one other hurdle I wanted to chat with you about. I understand that part of the marketing on this is that they're trying to catch the people who, are a little spooked by these high and rising gas costs. Are we going to see the purchase price of these vehicles come down either through tax credits or, as you mentioned, leasing, some other forms of savings in there?
It looks to me like the more immediate effect is going to be using leasing, because apparently residual value, or the resale values, the potential resale values for these cars are actually pretty high. So if the car makers can catch people who are starting to say, wow, gasoline is volatile, it keeps rocketing around, maybe it's worth it investing in one of these vehicles if I can kind of take the risk out of the future. In other words, rather than buy the car and find out 3 or 4 years later that its technology has been superseded, which is not out of the realm of possibility. You lease the car, you put that technology risk on the car company, you run it for 3 years, and you turn it back in and you get whatever's new in 2015. I talked to a couple of people who that's what they did, and they're fine with that. The question is, how many of those people are there? Right now, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot. Whether these new models coming in will start to expand that, that's the question.